giving me this opportunity to talk about sound in my own state. This is a city that I have, brought up as a sound person, as a film lover, and Krishnamurti sir and Devdas sir's work has basically influenced me to be a sound man in the institute. So to be able to share dais with him is an honor and a privilege. And I'm sorry I'm not showing you. There's a lot of calls from the organizers. Are we showing something? Are we discussing something? And I know I'm disappointing you on that front. Maybe in the next year or the year after, when we do a master class, we could have some audio-visual experience of what our work is. I think more than anything, I've been a part of the GC of this festival. So during the discussions, many of the trend that a commercial industry is facing has come up for discussion that we need to address, and sound was one such issue. And I thought we should put together a talk or a symposium, something like that, so we can talk about it. Because these are the challenges faced by the younger generation mostly, and they need guidance, they need experience to talk to them. So we want to keep and restrict this get together as a conversation. So what are the challenges of sync sound? I think it not just sync sound. What are the challenges of having sound on film? Historically speaking, it is said that when sound came into being in the film, it ruined the art of cinema. That was one of the major criticism that the sound people had to face from the time sound came into films. The reason being that from the silent era to sound era, a little bit of fancy stories you might have heard. People who didn't have good voices went out from the acting scenario. People who couldn't sing were no more actors the following day. One Friday happens in every actor's life, in every film person's life, and the following Monday, you realize that you don't exist, because something else has changed. So sound came into films on a weekend like that. And the following week, they were actors who were superstars, were asked to leave the studio because they couldn't sing. And there are horrid stories like that, very, very, very fashionable stories like that. But I think for more than anything, when sound came into being, we suffered opposition from the entire film industry. Because, who used to put on makeup for first in a film unit? It was a cameraman. Because they needed to face such heavy and strong light, they needed to put makeup. So the cameraman was the first person who used to go and get made up. So obviously camera had problems with sound, because it restricted many things. But for me, before I come into the restriction, it allowed the primary thing sound has done into cinema was standardizing the speed of cinema. We all know in the silent era, the speed of the cinema was about 16 frames a second. And almost, the movement of people were never correlated to the physical movement of people, of characters and actors. And there was a war, in today's time. Being in Mumbai film industry and being in South Indian film industry, especially Chennai, where a surround mix they still call it DTS mixing. And a surround mix for us in Bombay, we are called Dolby mixers. There was a war between DTS and Dolby in terms of format. Who is louder? So we experienced in the early 2000 that the mixes that came from Chennai, from the southern film industry, still we face that a lot in Telugu. They were extremely loud. And that was one of the selling points of DTS technology, that we could go as loud as nobody else can. This created a war, and that war still continues between exhibition system and the sound designers and the directors and producers. Because we experience our standardized levels in which we mix the film being turned down in theaters. Primary reason being the theaters are not following the necessary standard, ISO standard. So we tend to mix the film louder, so that we presume that they will turn it down, so we'll turn it up. This war is still going on, and I refuse to be part of that war. And so similarly, in the 20s, there was a war between the creative force of cinema and the exhibition system. So they used to crank up the speed of cinema in the theaters. They were using servo-controlled motors in exhibition system. They used to crank up speed so that they could get one more show. I'm talking about mainstream Hollywood, which we all know as technological bystander. So when they shoot, the cameraman and the director, they used to discuss, try to compensate the speed they're going to add up in the exhibition system. So this war between exhibitors and the creative force is a part of history of cinema. So when sound came into being, that it had to be, the speed of cinema had to be standardized to 90 feet per minute. So we came to 24 FPS, thanks to sound. So everybody had to be at the clock speed of 24 FPS. The 24 FPS that we know today came into being because of sound. So that's the biggest contribution of sound. The speed of cinema was standardized. Secondly, they used to shoot in a very low sensitive picture stock called monochromatic stock. I don't know if you know what is a monochromatic stock, because you don't even see film stock these days. Monochromatic stock is very blue sensitive stock, very slow speed. It needed arc light to be exposed. And arc light made a lot of noise in the shooting floors. So when the sound came into being, we can't have noise. So at this time in time, the technology was moving forward, and Kodak has invented what they call a parachromatic footage stock, which is close to the red sensitive area of the light spectrum, which is far more good images, and it could expose at low sensitive light. And the industry always wanted it, creative force always wanted it, but the industry never gave it because it was expensive stocks. So when sound came in, arc light needed to go out of the studios so that the floor have to be silent. So the filmmakers have to shift from monochromatic stock to parachromatic stock. So now, all the cameramen in this room, please show some respect to sound. We gave you the best stock available at that time, so that we could shoot in incandescent light, in red light. So shooting floors went quiet. Then came the processing. The processing in those time of the film used to happen in what you call crank and tank. It's called crank and tank. It wasn't a technology as such. Camera people would know. Camera people of older generation would know what is crank and tank. That you expose the stock, you roll it up in a crank it up in a metal box, and then you dip it in the developer. You dip it, then you put it in hypo, then you put it in fix. So in low light conditions, a developer and a person who has an acute eye for imaging could see the images developing. That's how it used to get developed. That's called the crank and tack technology. Now around this time, this is all happening in 1920s, remember. Around this time, the industry was also practicing, toying with the idea of machinery development, developing stock in picture through machines. And industry producers never accepted it because they thought, passing the exposed stock through machines would tear it up and they would lose valuable, shooting footage. So they never accepted it. But the problem with crank and tank is that, when you do crank and tank, because it is rolled in metal framework, and when you tank it, and the eddy current, which is a little bit of physics, the eddy current between on the top and bottom of the crank used to destroy the stock images, which includes basically it affected so much on sound. So the industry had to move from manual processing to automatic processing. That is how our labs, which has served us for more than 1920s to just 5 years ago, such a long breadth of time, all the automated machines which processes film came into existence because of sound. Now, camera people who always blame us for sound, for being a pain in the ass, because we used to have they say, in olden times when we were using Nagaram, we had connected a cable from the camera to a Nagaram recorder. So we had the umbilical cord we always collected. So always cameramen used to curse us, like this sound people, because of them we can't move anywhere out. So they always wanted to break away from us. And we gave them reasons to rejoice in life, be it the speed of sound, speed of a picture, be it standardization of stock, be it standardization of the speed of processing. All of it came because of sound. And to the producers, one more good news. In the 1927 to 1930, if you look at the business of Hollywood, because of the enthusiasm, the business of cinema has doubled up, by 50%. In 1927, 27 million was the overall business collection of Hollywood. It came to 100 million in 1930, just in 3 years. Suddenly, there's a rejuvenation of industry when sound came into being. Now, this is far more historic because film industry is the only industry in the US that survived the Great Depression. The primary reason was sound. Now please, all the producers and directors, remember, you stand by us, you have a reason to rejoice. Now, all the challenges, we have faced all the challenges. From historically, we have faced it. Now, look at it from any other perspective. Now, we come to the modern time, as I call it, the modern time, because sound continued to be part of, from photographic medium, it went into, the magnetic recording came into being in the 70s. And suddenly, from one source of sound, we could have a 6-track stereo sound. You might know the story of Sholay and films like that in the Hollywood that has came out with magnetic sound stripped onto the film. And 70mm cinema, the Cinerama and the 70mm and the CinemaScope had got a wide reach and the reason to being like a big image because it had we were able to provide a 6-track stereo through magnetic recording technology. Sad is that the technology didn't survive because it had its own problems. Then we were married to the picture. Remember, sound people in any set, historically, we sacrifice for the betterment of picture. One reason, in a 35mm picture, 35mm picture, we gave you so much of space and we took only 3 mil space in a 35mm strip where we used to record the entire sound of the picture. Whenever technological innovation came in, we didn't encroach into a space. We still used the 3 ml space. But we went into the side of the sprocket on either side. Sony, SDDS, when came into being, we took up the space available on the either side of the sprockets. Then Kodak felt very bad that we are only doing picture, we had to do something about sound. So they created a technology called CRD sound, which Kodak used to print within their 4-track stereo, optical stereo they used to print. Dick Tracy is the first film that came in that technology. But when the picture tear off after say 50th screening, you lose the sound, so it could never work. Dick Tracy came in and it died out. That whole format died out on that. So one more information: picture people, don't try to do sound. Okay, we are better off doing it by ourselves. We will tell you the reasons. Then Dolby came into being, and Dolby invented the 6-track stereo, and first time ever we had optical stereo printed in the film with the mono backup. We still didn't do anything to picture. We just wanted you to better yourself, and we compromised, because if anybody knows the processing technology, the gamma value that you need a better quality print is 1.4 gamma. 1.4 gamma is not a very good value for sound. I know I'm talking Greek because you guys don't deal with all these things now. It's gone. So we used to go and sit in the library, in the lab, and in the negative processing and check values and all that. So we gave away. We needed a higher gamma value because we are using a 20 ASS stock because we could only have black and white in the soundtrack. So that also we compromised and gave you. Then Ray Dolby, who has won an Oscar for technical excellence, invented what we call the famous Dolby Spectrum recording technology, and he developed that into recording digital stereo sound onto film. Even then, we didn't trouble you. We used the space between the sprockets to record sound. We've been accommodating. We've been like a good wife in a bad marriage, and we still gave you the best possible. So, and we came out of film, say the marriage, and I say marriage, don't misunderstand, we call it married print. The final print is called married print. We came out of the marriage when you decided to take away film from your life. So now we are two independent entities working towards betterment of cinema as an experience. Now I'll tell you why. Stock has gone out of the equation. Now you have computer graphics, you have VFX, you can make cinema without camera, you can make cinema without actors, you can do anything because picture has given you every possible available technology. Then people thought, why should I go and watch cinema, in theaters? Because I can watch it at my home, I have a DVD, I have a good quality print, why should I go? And every film that gets released will come soon into my fingertips. So the business starts to fall. And the only reason people came back to theaters is because of good sound. The duty of sound people, as I understand, people like me who are working in film, is to give you an experience that you can only experience in cinema halls. Be it a larger than life experience, be it an experience that you feel close to your heart, which you cannot get in your drawing rooms with a DVD player. That's why sound is more important. Sound is so important so that it brings back people into theater. Now, picture has gone through from a 2-dimensional space into a 3-dimensional space. They've been toying to a space that a spectator can decide, basically virtual reality spectrum. So we felt we left out. Now Dolby is no more there. There's no science behind us now. Scientists are not there. Bodies are not there. Nobody is putting out things that can be fascinating, that can take the industry forward, except the fact that the Kodak is no more existing. The Kodak Theatre has been bought by Dolby. It is called Dolby Theatre now. Apart from that, nothing has happened. So we decided we have to extend our expertise, our experience into the actors. And what is that experience? That experience is understanding cinema in its basic core. And that core aspect is, what is cinema? The cinema is a continuum of time and space. At the moment you place a camera there, the cameraman and the director is deciding to show you only that viewpoint, only that space. Every time you blink an eye, which is a cut, from the editing terms, blink of an eye is a cut. They are making choices for you. How to experience a space where characters are embedded, images are created. And that space is a two-dimensional space. But the experience of that space is not two-dimensional. The experience of that space is, I would say, immersive. How does that immersive experience come in? When you see a picture, when you see a landscape, the moment you experience that landscape as an image. And the moment I put sound to that image, I put a cricket sound, you assume that it is a night or it is a summer day. I put a quail sound, it's a day, it becomes summer. I put some rumbling thunder, you feel it is rains are going to come. The sensation of time, the temporal element of your experience is what we put in as individual elements of sound, which makes you go inside that space. The sound takes you inside. When you see a picture, an image, a visual image, which is two-dimensional in its nature, and we put sound into it because the sound is spherical in its nature, and it allows an audience to go inside. So you feel, because of sound, that you go through an immersive experience. And that is by nature of the sound within the cinema spectrum. If you look at the cinemas of Robert Bresson, Tarkovsky, such masters' work, you feel that you've been transported to a space which you can only experience in cinema. That is a combination of this spatial and temporal element. And that is primarily due to the temporal element being so immersive. So what we have done when the picture moved away from us is to physically create this immersive space in the cinema halls. That if there is a screen and the screen is extending into the cinema hall, which has a geometrical shape, the technology allowed me to position sound wherever I want in the theater, in that geometrical space. It could be above, which often when we take a low angle shot, you experience a height, or you take a bird eye view shot, you experience a height. Without these two, we could create a sense of height in cinema without the expressions of going into, for me, taking a camera out of a tripod is a political decision. When you don't have to deal with the politics of cinema, I still want to make a sense of height in cinema. I can easily do with the newfound technology that we do today, which is independent of picture space. That is where we have come to. That is why people are coming back to theaters, remember. Now, historically, we have dealt with challenges in sound. So then what are we discussing about challenges of sync sound? Now, sync sound is not a new technology. It is how we knew how to make films, Whereas dubbing or ADR was a new technology, at that time. We departed from a normal course of movement of cinema, a normal course of movement of the industry, because of our own convenience, make you feel. When you go to a seashore, you feel calm and quiet. When you go to a valley, you feel calm and quiet. Why? Because you're hearing longer expressions of sound there.